My name is Annie. Welcome to my channel, Eat, Drink, and Be Reading. And today I'm going to talk about all the books I read in August. So August was a really great reading month. I read 8 books. I think 2 of those were audio. Most of them were on my Kindle. Several from the library, and so it was a lot of fun, unexpected because so many books came available from the library, but I still managed to read several of the books that I was hoping to read anyway, so it was excellent reading. So let's not dilly-dally, we'll jump in. Book number 1 is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a young adult book about a girl. She's a teenager. She's a senior in high school, and she is also a mom of a little girl and is trying to figure out what her life is going to look like. She wants to be a chef. She is this amazing cook, but doesn't know if she can actually do that because she also has this daughter that she loves and wants to take care of. And what does it look like to also be a normal young teenage girl? It was beautifully written. I loved the food aspects. Like one of the recipes, like it says, do this for the, like how long you're supposed to cook something was 3 Cardi B songs. But just, I loved being in a restaurants. I loved her cooking. I loved the fact that she called her daughter baby girl all the time. It was just so well done. A beautiful look into cultures that are different than mine, experiences that are different than mine, but full of characters that I really loved. And I just thought it was fantastic and wonderful, and it made me want to read more Elizabeth Acevedo. And so I actually put The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo on hold of my library for the audiobook because Elizabeth Acevedo narrates it and I got it. So I also read The Poet X this month. This is actually written in verse, in like spoken word poetry, which made listening to the audio phenomenal. Like, highly recommend the audio. This is one of the most vulnerable, raw, and honest books I have ever read. And I think part of it's because it's written like poetry, and so it is written in this like raw, honest format anyway. And it was just heartbreaking and beautiful. I felt like, as someone who is a Christian, like the way her family talked about fate and Jesus just broke my heart because it seemed it's so different than what I believe. But there was still like characters that cared so much. And so I just thought, yeah, it was beautiful. I loved the format, especially loved listening to it on audio with Elizabeth Acevedo reading it the way she always imagined it to be. It was, I maybe even liked it better than With the Fire on High, and I really liked With the Fire on High. Right. Number 3 is The Almost Sisters by Joshilyn Jackson. This is Southern fiction. It takes place in Alabama. There is a sister, a girl, adult woman, who gets pregnant after sleeping with a guy at a cosplay event, and he was dressed up as Batman. She doesn't know how to reach him. She's keeping it a secret, and then finds out that her grandmother down in Alabama has memory issues, that something is going on, moves down to be with her, brings her niece along with her. Her stepsister, her perfect stepsister, has a marriage that's falling apart. And she also finds out this secret that her family has been keeping whenever it's found in the attic of her grandmother's home. So there's mystery, there's just like really interesting family dynamics, but there's also a really like unexpected look at racism in the Deep South that I didn't know was going to happen, and I thought was really well done. Number 4 is American Royals by Katharine McGee. This I put on hold a long time ago, kind of forgot that I had, and it came available from my library. And honestly, it was just a lot of fun. I think I realized something that I need in more of like lighthearted romantic stories is I liked that there were different storylines. So I got some variety in my story, even though most of these storylines were based at least partially in romance. Like, I don't mind romance, but I just need more than that in a story. And this at least had different storylines happening that gave me the variety in the book that I needed. But it is also kind of perfect for a history lover, which I am, because it is telling the story of what present day America would look like if George Washington had not become president, but instead had become king, and we had a monarchy of the Washingtons. And so that was just this element that runs through the whole thing that I just found fascinating. My husband read it and he thought it was just okay. I really enjoyed it, and I wonder if it's because of this like underlying curiosity that I had of what would America look like if it was a monarchy. And so I thought it was a ton of fun, like just really a lot of fun. And I think the next one is out or coming out, and I have that one on hold too, so we'll see. Number 5 is The City We Became by N.K. Jemison. This is an urban fantasy that is about like this monster thing that is like destroy like cities. So like major cities will have a time when they are born, and then once they are born, there is this like monster thing that wants to destroy them. And then there's a person that represents the city that fights back on the city's behalf. So this is what's happening in New York. But not only is there this person that represents New York, there's a person that represents each of the 5 boroughs. It was very interesting, unlike anything I've ever read. I've never read urban fantasy. I don't really know that I read adult fantasy. I don't think that I have at all. And so I heard great things about this. I've heard about N.K. Jemison for a long time. This is her new one. Heard people rave about it. I hated the prologue, guys, with such emphatic passion. Like, hated the prologue. It was so erratic, and I understood it. Like, what's happening in the story is erratic, and so the prose is written very erratically, and so I can appreciate what she's doing, but I was sitting there, I was like, I cannot read a whole book like this. If this is how it continues, I will definitely not finish this book. Thankfully, it did not continue to be written the way the prologue was. But guys, I didn't love any of the characters. Like, I really just, there were aspects of them, and there was like one character that I'm like, I really don't want you to die because you have a daughter. But that's kind of it. And yeah, I couldn't find the characters that I was like really, I was rooting for the city of New York as a whole, but other than that, like the individual characters I just didn't love. And I did not love the way she decided to end the storyline for Staten Island. I recognize that she's setting up, there's a trilogy, I think, like she's setting up the next book with what she did there. But I like books that offer redemption and offer opportunities for change and for characters to grow. And I just felt like Staten Island was written off from the beginning, and they never let her go full circle. And maybe that tells something about reality, but I just didn't enjoy reading it. I really wanted to love it, and I just didn't. All right, book number 6. This one is my favorite from the month. One of my favorites of the year. It is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. I should know how to say her name because I've read Salt to the Sea, and I really enjoyed that. And this was another one that I've had on hold for months at my library, and I loved it. It is like a young adult historical fiction that takes place in Spain in the decades after the Spanish Civil War, in the midst of the Franco regime, his dictatorship in Spain. And I just loved it. I loved all the characters that I interacted with, my heart broke for all of them. I was pulling for them. I was so frustrated with things that were happening in the country. I also found it fascinating. I thought it was beautiful. I would have loved more. Like, I would have loved, there was like a time jump, and I wanted to hear what happened between those two time periods because I was just so interested. And I've actually gone and bought 2 more nonfiction books about this time, one specifically about the Spanish Civil War and one about kind of those decades afterward, because I'm so fascinated by it and was so drawn in because of the story of the Fountains of Silence that I want to read more. And she had like a list of the books that she used when she was researching this, and I picked out a couple, and one for audio and one that I now own that's a graphic memoir that I'm really kind of afraid to read because I've never read a graphic novel at all, much less a graphic memoir, but I'm also really excited. Number 7 is The Color of Compromise, the truth about the American church's complicity and racism by Jemar Tisby. I listened to this on audio throughout the month. It was excellent. It is a historical look at the church in America and its role in racism. Complicity is the word in the title, and it's very accurate. And I just was heartbroken. Like, there's so much lament that needs to be done in the church because of both its past and present actions or lack of action. And I just thought Jemar Tisby did an excellent job of explaining history, telling it in a way that is like, captivating is not the right word, but that you, like, it's not boring to read. That gives us such a basis for understanding of what's happening now and the church's lack of action now. That I want to put it in the hands of so many people, particularly Christians, of like, understand this, but written by someone who does believe in Jesus and in what the Bible says, and he just has such a loving way of calling out the church that I thought was really well done. Last but not least is Florida. This is the only physical book that I've owned this month. They were all Kindle or audio. Florida by Lauren Groff. This is a short story collection. All of it takes place either in Florida or with characters who are like live in Florida and are visiting elsewhere. This was so good. The hard thing is there weren't a whole lot of, like, even the short stories, so many of the characters in the short stories I didn't love, but there were a few that I really did enjoy. But I just thought the way she wrote about ordinary people and ordinary lives in this particular place was fascinating and really well done. It's like dripping with setting and location, but also so subtle in the way that she tells the stories of these characters. I think it is a fantastic place to start. If you have not read many short stories, if you like short stories collections, be sure to include this one. It was a National Book Award finalist. I don't think it was 5-star read for me, but it was a really great read, and I was really impressed with the way she told stories and wrote, like, yeah, just these very subtle, relatable characters. All right, guys, that was August. It kind of, like, the month seemed to fly by, but I feel like I read, like, it feels like a long time since I read With the Fire on High, which I started at the beginning of August. And so it was fun to look back and remember what I've read. What have you read? What did you read in August? What are you reading now? Do you love any of these books? Did I just say something like you're like, how in the world, Annie, did you love that or not like that? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Let's build a community. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk later. Bye, y'all.